Today, we're building some shelving at Axe Capoeira Kansas City. This is the after-work garage. The first thing I did was sketch out a rough picture. Okay, a very rough picture of what the shelf is going to look like, based on measurements I took of the room that it's going in. Next, I drew up a diagram of each upright section and made some rough calculations on how much material would be needed in total. This may be the boring part, but having some idea of what you're aiming for makes the build go a lot smoother, even if you don't end up following it to a T. So really one of the best places to get metal for a reasonable rate is to make friends with your local scrapyard. A lot of scrapyards these days don't let people come into them and pick metal just because of liability and insurance reasons. But we're lucky enough in Kansas City to have one that does, and so we can go treasure hunting. All right, so this is what we got for metal. We got a bunch of square tubing. We'll start to measure it out and cut it up. As you can see, I have the parts cut and laid out for the 3 vertical parts of the shelving unit. The long piece is going to go up against the wall. The skinny piece next to it is going to go stand vertically to hold up the outer part of the shelf. And then the wide part on the far right is going to go between the 2 vertical stands to support the shelf. And then that small part in the middle is going to go on the floor to hold the spacing. Since everything was extremely rusty, I did my best to clean it up with a grinder so that it'll take a weld a little better, and then maybe we can prime and paint it as well. Put some pieces together and hopefully you can get a sense of what these shelves are going to look like. The long side's going to go up against the wall, and that notch there on the shoulder is for a long beam, that long beam in fact. That's going to go lengthwise and tie all of these supports together. Now there's going to be a second beam tying them together to support the shelves towards the back, towards this area, but I haven't cut that one up yet. So I'll check back with you in a little bit and go from there. Alright, I've got the basic skeleton of the shelf put together here in place. We still have to decide what to do on these uprights, whether we're going to screw in some adjustable shelving racks or put on more permanent cross members on top. As you can see, I did a little more work on the shelving here. I added these cross braces that are going to hold up the shelf and keep it a little more square. And then I added cross members on top of the posts that are going to hold up an 18-inch shelf. It's going to span the width of the room. Now that piece of veneered plywood there just was used to protect the wall, though as you can see I didn't do a perfect job. And I made a little bit of a mistake here using the wrong dimension square tube. Well, I had to because the last bit of that 3-inch square tube I cut a little too short. They say something about measuring and cutting, but I never remember it. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the wood that we're going to put on for the main shelf. And I'll get back to you outside. Since we're working on a budget, I didn't want to buy wood specifically for this project. So what I'm doing is using some wood that I had left over and some just really nice veneer. So it's not exactly veneer, it's just thin veneered plywood, which isn't thick enough to make shelves. But what I'm going to do is sandwich it on top of some plywood that doesn't look as nice, but it's going to give it that structural support. As you can see with the wood pieces here that are going to become the top of the main shelf, my job weighting down the veneered plywood to laminate it to the plywood underneath that's going to support it didn't work so well. So I ended up screwing it down in areas where it was bulging up, and since these are a little wider than the shelf's going to ultimately be, I'm going to go ahead and cut off those screwed areas, and hopefully the glue is set. And we'll take a look. We have help on this project. My friend Camille from work. should show you how things are coming along. We're in an active capoeira studio, so we got the music going on in the background as they're teaching classes. But I got the wood cut. I'm planning on notching out this part right here so it fits in. And then I'm leaving a little space so we can set this back about 1 inch. And I've done similarly here, making a notch, measuring it out for that post. And then on this piece I've also measured out a notch and where we're going to cut that. So. Alright, well I cut the notch out there on the bottom. Got the other notches out there on the top. And I got that one cut out for a post. So let's see how this goes. We got the shelves fitted here. You know some of those lines aren't straight, especially down the sides. That's my fault for the circular saw. And then this bowing that occurred just because the lower quality plywood getting saturated with the glue, that'll come out when I screw this down to the metal. To attach the shelf tops to the metal frame, I opted to drill and tap holes into the frame itself so that I could screw the shelving down from the top, countersinking the screws in flush with the surface. While this was a little more work, I figured it would be more durable than screwing in wood screws from the bottom, especially given the quality of the base wood, or lack thereof. So let me show you my problem. The other day I broke a tap off in here. I was probably going a little too quick. The idea is that, you know, you drill it in and it adds threading to the hole. But yeah, I snapped it off, and that's a real hard tool steel, so I'm not going to be able to get it out very easily. So I think I'm going to try to maybe weld on a little handle so that'll let me unscrew it to get that out of that hole. So I put a glob of weld on there to hold that screw to the top of the broken tap. And hopefully that's going to be enough to let me be able to turn it out. Put a touch of lubrication on there. Maybe help ease it out just the slightest bit. So as you can see, it's moving with the tap, which is good news. But what I want is to be able to wiggle this tap out. So I have to unscrew it. Oh no. Oh no, my weld broke off. I decided to give up on removing the broken tap and push on with fitting the wood shelves to the top of the frame. There were plenty of other screws holding the shelf top in place, and I had already drilled a screw hole in the wood above where the broken stud was, so it still laid down flat. For aesthetics, I planned to glue a cut-off screw head into this hole to give the appearance that I didn't completely mess up that attachment point. Because of the extremely limited budget for this project, I used 2x4s and the extra 1/4 inch veneered plywood to create the top shelf. Unfortunately, I didn't get all of this process on camera, but you can see the results here. I used the same tapped hole and screw system to fasten 3 supporting 2x4s to the metal supports, and then use small wood screws to attach the top plywood to the 2x4s. Then, some of the kids at the studio were able to sand and finish the shelves with a clear polyurethane. After this dried, the shelves were ready for use. I hope this was informative and gives you an idea of one way to build sturdy shelving with a limited budget. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time on the After Work Garage.